Good afternoon, and welcome to MAAD Channel 395 News. My name is Andrew Herzog.
My name is Alex Turner.
And we are your anchors for this afternoon's report. So, today we have a special segment. We will be discussing the impacts of climate change on the world's politics, because we all know the politicians won't.
Before we start on what our reporters have for us, we'd like to get an update on the weather from our very own weatherman, Marcus Ventimiglia.
Hi, my name is Marcus Ventimiglia, and today we're going to talk about the weather. There will be a cold front system coming in from the southwest Pacific, where in California, the average temperature will range between 64 degrees and 52 degrees Fahrenheit. In Mexico, it's going to be hot. In the Midwest, the temperature will range between 40 degrees and 20 degrees Fahrenheit. In Canada, it's going to be cold. On the East Coast, the average temperature will range between 50 degrees and 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And back to you, Alex.
And thanks for that, Marcus. Now, if I'm at work, don't you have to be on a ship in the next 3 seconds?
Ah, crap.
And now to you, Marcus, about your piece on the Northwest Passage.
Thank you, Alex, for that segue into my piece. As you can all see, I have the magic ability to teleport. I am currently on an icebreaker in the Northwest Passage, as you can see behind me. The Northwest Passage is an opening in Canada that stretches out from northern Alaska through Canada and pops back out onto the Atlantic Ocean. There are 7 different channels, all with varying range of difficulty. It's a quick route from the Bering Sea to the Atlantic and vice versa. The Northwest Passage was first discovered in 1850 by an Irish explorer by the name of Robert McClure. During this time, the passage was mostly frozen over, making regular travel nearly impossible. It wasn't until 2009 where actual trade started going through the passage due to sea ice receding. So you may be asking, why is this important to us? Well, first and foremost, this is a prime example of anthropogenic climate change. The sea ice is melting, and it's melting in a place where it shouldn't be. Second, this will open an economically viable trade route, cutting transportation time and shipping costs dramatically. Also, there are geopolitical problems with the passage. Many countries have been telling Canada that the passage is an international route. Meanwhile, Canada affirms that its belief that the passage is definitely internal waters. We will see how this plays out in the future. This is Marcus Ventimiglia, and back to you, Alex.
Thanks for that riveting report, Marcus. That's a really interesting topic, don't you think, Andrew?
Yes, it was, Alex. I'm interested to see how it turns out.
In further news, Kivalina, a city in northwest Alaska, has in the past sued 24 fossil fuel companies for contributing to the erosion of Kivalina through exponential levels of greenhouse gas emissions, for initiating a false debate of climate change. In the attempt by the fossil fuel companies to discredit scientists and keep fossil fuel profits high, the courts have supported the fossil fuel companies. Kivalina sits on a thin strip of land between the Arctic Ocean and the lagoon, entrapping the village from water. There are no roads to travel to from Kivalina, so warming ocean temperatures and sea ice melting quicker had led to erosion on the coastlines. The people are struggling to venture on to the thinner ice and hunt and provide food for their families. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration reported in 2014 that the Arctic has been warming twice as fast as anywhere else in the world.
Now, we will switch it off to Depak Singh in the North Pole.
Thank you for that introduction, Andrew. I'm here on the ship in the North Pole, not the same ship that Marcus happens to be on. The reason I'm here today is to tell you all about the Russian push for the Arctic. As the sea ice melts, there is increased accessibility to the North Pole. We've been starting to see Russia reactivate their bases around the region. This comes from a massive want and need for their resources there. These resources are primarily oil and gas, which the Arctic has about 412 billion barrels of. This is about 22% of the world's undiscovered oil. So you can see the want that Russia has for for the Arctic. Russia has also been training troops in the Arctic in combat scenarios. Russia has also accelerated building icebreakers to gain quicker access to the Arctic. Russia is also spending a lot of money to winterize their military infrastructure. All of this appears as an aggressive movement to the other Arctic nations, such as the United States and Norway, as well as Canada, who are still uncertain of Russia's actual intentions. Other nations have also been cautious of Russia since they annexed Crimea in 2014. Russia taking control of the North Pole would guarantee better trade routes for the country. This would also give them control of the fastest sea lane. This comes of interest to China, which exports a lot of goods daily, but is detrimental to many other nations that hope to trade that way. And back to you.
In recent news, the GOP tax plan was recently passed in the Senate. One of the provisions in the bill meant to open up the National Arctic Wildlife Refuge for oil and gas development. The Trump administration estimates that over the course of 10 years, this will bring in roughly $1.8 billion. However, reports from Bloomberg and the Center for American Progress estimates that the bill would bring in roughly $145 to $37 million. Described as the American Serengeti, the refuge covers 19 million acres of land in Alaska. At a committee hearing last month, Senator Bernie Sanders raised the issue of raising over $1 billion for fossil fuels amid the devastating effects of human-caused climate change. The United Nations predicts the world's ocean will be at least 1 meter higher by the end of the current century. After another 100 years, it could be 4 times that. It's really a huge problem, a global problem, and the cost of dealing with this or not dealing with it depends on what happens, and it's just enormous. The world has already passed the 1 degree mark. The Paris Climate Change Accord aims to stave off 2 degrees by the end of the century, but the United Nations warned just a few weeks ago that the world had committed to only 1/3 of the emissions cuts necessary to meet the goal. The problem could well be most dire in places such as Vancouver. For example, Metro Vancouver is the most vulnerable urban area in Canada to sea level rise. We have about 250,000 people living within a meter of the regular sea level. At 2 degrees, hundreds of homes and businesses in northern Vancouver would be underwater, as these would be near False Creek waterfront. By 4 degrees it would be by Stanley Park, and at that point it would become an island. The neighborhood of Mount Pleasant and Fairview would also become a sea of blue, as it's covered by the ocean. Richmond is only 1 meter above the sea level now, but according to an engineering major known as John Irving, the city has been preparing for sea level rise for years. Between building up dikes, buildings, and other such areas that are between 50 meters wide, the city is getting ready as fast as it can. In most communities, flood prevention is in the early planning stages, focused largely on preventing development in high-risk areas and building dikes and other such similar places to try to keep them from harm. Then there are the costs, and that's the main problem. In a place known as Fraser Delta alone would cost roughly $10 billion to build against coastal and the Fraser River flooding zone. In 2016, the Fraser Basin Council found that 71% of its existing dikes were vulnerable in the event of a major coastal flood. The cause of rising sea level is twofold. Global warming is happening twice as fast in the Arctic as it is in the rest of the world, and sea ice is melting at a rapid rate. In addition, the oceans are warming up and warmer water takes up more space.
And this concludes tonight's segment of MAAD News. Thank you for joining us, America. My name is Alex Turner.
My name is Andrew Herzog.
And I'm officially quitting this job today.
Northwest Passage, as you can see behind me. God damn.
In further news, Kivalina, a city in northwest Alaska, is in the past.
I can't dude, I can't do this right now.
Oh.
Drew, you gotta...
You're not gonna be able to get...
The Northwest Passage is an opening in Canada that stretches out from the northern Alaska through Canada and pops back out onto the Atlantic Ocean. It is a quick route from the Bering Sea to the Atlantic and vice versa. There are 7 different channels, all with varying range of difficulty of navigation. The Northwest Passage was first discovered in 1850 by an Irish explorer by the name of Robert McClure. During this time, the passage was nearly impossible to travel through due to the freezing of the ice. I messed up, dude. I lost my